Hey everyone, it's Mari. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I have a 12 by 12 scrapbooking process for you. And I'm going to be scrapbooking this photograph of my daughter and her husband. It's a wedding photo. And I think it's printed at about 4.5 by 3.5. And I am going to be using a basil marshmallow piece of cardstock as my base today. And I'm going to be doing some mixed media. So I wanted to treat this with some gesso. I'm using the Vicki Boutin gesso, which is opaque. I love this gesso. It is, I think, my new favorite gesso that I've been using. I really, really love it. I'm also going to be using a Sketchabilities sketch, which you can see has lots of mixed media, or a suggestion of lots of mixed media in the background. And I just love those sketches. I pin them quite often on Pinterest, and I just think they're a lot of fun. I am going to be using a bunch of Distress Oxide inks here. I'm going to be using Evergreen Bow. I'm going to be using Tattered Rose, a little bit of Antique Linen, some Bundled Sage, and some Fossilized Amber. And I don't know if you see Fossilized Amber on there or not right now, but I'm definitely going to be using that. And maybe that's the color that I've got on there right now, is the Fossilized Amber. So I'm just taking I think this is a Prima mixed media brush, and I'm just taking and putting some water in the brush, and then I'm adding some of the Distress ink to that, and I'm just blending it onto my cardstock. And I'm going to be using the Maggie Holmes Flourish collection for this layout, and I'm sure you've seen that collection. It's just gorgeous, as are all of the Crepe Paper Maggie Holmes collections. I really love the tones and the colors in that collection for this photograph, which I printed in color. And it just has so many pretty greens and yellows. And I knew that collection would go very nicely with that photo. So you can just see that I'm using kind of like the bluey green and the greens and the yellows and the pinks as the base for my background. And then I'm just going to do some splatters in those colors and just kind of really create a distressed background. Some of my favorite patterned paper are pattern papers that have distressing on them. And if you've been following me for a while, you've heard me talk about that before. I love that. Now, you'll just see there, I'm pointing out that it looks like there's a suggestion of some stamping on that sketch, and I love that idea. This is a Carabelle stamp, and it's one of those border stamps. I love these things. They're so gorgeous. They are not inexpensive, but they are extremely high quality, and I love them. Love, love, love them. So I am going to be using some archival ink in Watering Can, which is one of my favorite colors of archival ink. I'm going to ink up my stamp, and I'm going to stamp off of this onto another piece of paper because I want to do some second generation stamping on my layout. So I don't want the ink to be like really super dominant. I just want it to kind of be muted in the background. So I'm going to create this vertical on my layout that kind of goes in the same direction as the ink strips that I have on there. And I am going to do a bunch of different stamping with this Watering Can archival ink here. I'm just going to show you how I clean up my stamps when I use archival ink. I'm going to show you that here in a second. I'm going to just take and use some more of that ink though before I clean it off of the stamp, just by taking it off of the block. And then this just allows me a little bit more flexibility with where that ink goes. So I'm just going to stamp those images down on a couple of other places, keeping in mind where I want my photograph to go. Now I'm going to take this archival ink cleaner, and I'm just going to use a baby wipe and that cleaner to clean off that stamp. Super easy. Now I'm going to take another distressing stamp, and this one is from Darkroom Door. I can't remember the name of it. If I think of it, guys, I'll link these up below. This one came from Simon Says Stamp, and the Carabelle Studio one came from a little shop that I shopped at when I was in Ottawa last time, and they had all of these the Carabelle stamps on clearance, if you can imagine. So I loaded up on them. Now I'm taking a Darkroom Door stencil as well, And once again, if I remember, I will link up to these products in the description box below. This was also purchased, I believe, at Simon. And I'm just going to take my Distress inks and I'm going to, in the same color palette that I've used, I'm going to just go over top of where I've stamped and where I've used those paint strokes. And I'm going to create another layer, this time kind of those circle shapes. So you can see that there's a real variety of shapes going on here. When you're layering, it's important to change that up, right? And make sure that you've got some different shapes that are happening. And so I'm just going in with those same colors and with my distressing tool, and I'm just blending on some of the ink through that stencil. And this is just going to create a really interesting background. You can see my background is building. This is really similar to what I would do in a art journal with the layers. The beautiful thing about the archival ink is that it's permanent. So you can use a lot of other products on top of that archival ink and it's not going to move. Once it's dry, it's permanent. You don't have to worry about it, reactivating, for example. I want my photo to really pop off of this background. And one way I can achieve that is by matting it in some black cardstock. So I just took a scrap that I had in my scrap drawer and I just quickly matted that. And now I'm going to I'm going to go back for a reference back to that sketch again and see what else needs to go onto this layout that I want to keep from the sketch. Now, the great thing about the sketch, if you are struggling at all with being inspired for ideas for a layout, the great thing about the sketch is it gives you a jumping off point, right? So you can keep whatever you want from the sketch and chuck whatever you want, modify the sketch however you please. But the really beautiful thing about a sketch is it just gives you that place to start from. So now the suggestion in the sketch is to have a vertical strip of pattern paper behind the photograph. And I'm just going into the collection and I'm taking a look at what I want to put there. Now there's 3 pattern papers suggested in that layer behind the photo. And so I have to be careful, right? I don't want 3 really bold patterns. So I want to mix it up and I want to have one that is patterned and a more bold pattern. So this one works for me. I like that it's black. The pattern in it is black, so it's very neutral. I have this scrap of this pattern paper from the small paper pad from the collection. I love the yellows and the whites and the greens in that pattern paper. So I'm going to use that for sure. And now I'm just kind of going through and I struggle a little bit here to decide on what I'm going to use because I really kind of wanted a solid, but there wasn't much for solids in the collection. So what I'm going to do is take this pattern paper that has the paintery kind of stripes on it, and I'm going to use one of the strips as my other pattern paper piece here that I'm going to use behind my photo. I actually don't end up using that darker green one. I use a lighter green. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to take my Stampin' Up! Note paper punch and I'm going to texturize these 2 strips and I'm going to layer those behind my photograph and on top of that kind of ferny leafy pattern paper piece that's going to go underneath. So I'm just going to get rid of those little pieces that I punched out of there. And now I'm just going to kind of see how I want to position these 2 little strips of pattern paper behind my photo. So you can see how the colors in those pattern papers really complement the photograph, and the colors in the photo, which are just the filter on the photo is just really soft and dreamy. And the colors are like yellows and greens and just really almost kind of like a really soft blue in the sky. So pretty. And you can see the Delta Bessborough in the background. I love this photograph of the kids on the riverbank in Saskatoon. It's just gorgeous. Now, I really wanted to use one of those dimensional stickers that's the moth from the collection, and I hadn't used any of those yet, and I love them. But I really wanted to use that as an embellishment on this layout just because I love the dimension and the colors. I think it's really pretty. So that's actually going to stay where I have it put there in the top left-hand corner. Now I'm just going to take a piece of the pattern paper and I fussy cut this one little piece that's going to go as an embellishment. And I really love this pink flower. It picks up on the subtle pink that I have stenciled in the background. And And also there's some pink in that moth dimensional sticker as well. So I'm just kind of looking at that, making sure I have this the way that I want it. And I realize now my photo is going to cover up some of that stamping that's to the right. So I really wanted that. I really wanted to retain that. So I'm going to get that stamp out again, that darkroom door kind of grid stamp. And I'm going to stamp some of that over on the right side of the photo. I'm also going to just take some of the little leaf die cut pieces from the collection and put them into that embellishment, that large embellishment area there as well. I'm really liking how this is looking. Now at this point, I don't remember if I've already done some sewing on this. I don't think I have. I am going to put some white sewing with my sewing machine through some of the layers. And you'll see that as I go here, but I think it might already be there because you can see that I've also matted a doily behind my pattern papers and my photo. So my photo mat, really the base of my photo mat is going to be that doily, which you can just see me flipping up there. So there's a large doily back there and then the pattern papers on top and then my photo on top of that. So I just re-stamped that distress stamp over to the side there so that that is still visible. And now what I've done is I've just taken a little piece of craft foam to back my photo just to pop it up a little bit. And I added a little bit of Tombow Mono liquid adhesive to the back there. Just going to take my T-square ruler here and I'm going to struggle with this a little bit, but I want to just make sure that I have my photograph on there straight. I hate it when things are crooked, but you know what? I am not really great at getting things on my layout straight. So I just really want to be diligent about trying to make sure that I have it on there properly. And now I've just stuck that down and I'm going to take those embellishments back again and put those onto the layout. I really love using repositionable adhesive, and that Kokio tape runner that I'm using there is repositionable. Once it's on there, it is permanent. After a while, it will stay there stuck. It'll lift the paper up if I try to remove it. But initially it is repositionable, which I really appreciate. Now I just want to take a little bit of foam adhesive and add that to some of the topmost layers that I'm going to be adding just to give a little dimension. And now I'm just going to take those leaves, those leaf pieces, and start to kind of get some of those added down, putting a little bit of dimension on the very ends of them so that they pop up a little bit. There's a few little tricks to creating some dimension with your layers, and this is one of them. If you, on the end pieces, the piece that sticks out the farthest on the layer, if you pop that up a bit, it does add some dimension. Now in the sketch, there is also a little cluster to the top right hand corner, and I definitely wanted to do that. I wanted to create a little bit of balance in that way because right now it's really heavy on the left side. So because my photograph is sticking out more to the right, that balances it a little bit, but it just needs a little something else to bring your eye up as well to that top part. So I'm taking one of the label stickers from the collection. I'm going to add that down there, and I am going to add a few other little pieces up to that area. And I'm also going to add a little bit of sewing with my sewing machine up to that area as well, just to continue that element of sewing up there as well. So I'm going to add a few little bits and pieces as well from the chipboard sticker sheet here and there on the layout, just trying to use as many bits of the collection as I can. I do have quite a bit of this collection to use up. I love it. Guys, you know, I love Maggie Holmes and crepe paper. Crepe paper I think is my all-time favorite, and I love her collections. I know that she has a new collection coming out here right away, and I don't have any of it yet, but you know that's going to make its way into my stash as well. I'm a bit of a collector of all things Maggie Holmes. Now I'm going to take some of the phrase stickers and I'm going to make them work here and there as well. I really wanted to use the black ones because that black mat in the photograph and then that piece of pattern paper behind the photo that has the black bits on it, I wanted to continue that to some of the different areas on the layout as well. I am going to eventually add a pink sticker to that top corner as well. You won't see that on camera or in the still shots. I added that after just because I wanted to continue to have a little bit of pink in that top right hand corner as well, since there's some pink in the other areas of the layout. Now I really love this little stamp sticker as well, and I am going to find a spot for that just because I love it, and that seemed to be a logical little spot there, and I'm going to just create a few more little layers in that way on that flower. So I'm going to also add this little heart piece as well. That's the chipboard heart. And I've added that gold puffy word sweet as well as the title. And I'm just going to add another one of those black phrase stickers also. Now I'm not going to do a ton of journaling on the front of my layout. I'm going to do a little bit of my handwriting underneath the word sweet. I'm just going to write the phrase so much love, just to put a little bit of my handwriting on the front. I try to do that with a lot of my layouts for my kids, just to add my handwriting somewhere on the layouts, just because I think that's kind of a cool personalized touch. And I'm also going to add a few of these little gold puffy leaves as well to the layout. Now the layout is basically finished at this point. I'm going to add some Heidi Swapp Color Shine gold splatters just to continue the gold as well. And I really love how this layout turned out. I am a huge fan of using stamps on my layouts. I have a lot of stamps in my stash from card making and from art journaling. I'm definitely a stamp junkie, that's for sure. I have a great collection of stamps, and I do really love using them on layouts. And I guess this just shows you can create your own background nicely with whatever different products that you have in your stash, whether you have watercolors or you have inks or whatever. There's a lot of really original and interesting ways that you can use those to create a mixed media background that's completely customized to whatever collection it is that you want to use. And in this case, it's Maggie Holmes Flourish. I've completely been inspired by the color palette in my photo and in that collection. So I hope you enjoyed this today, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. This was a little bit longer video than usual for me, so thanks for hanging around and watching the entire process, and I hope to see you another time here on my channel. And hey, don't forget, have an amazing day, and I'll see you another time. Bye-bye.